Have you ever wondered why God seems to act as a destroyer in the Old Testament, especially in his interactions with Israel? The Bible shows that God's actions were rooted in his holiness and justice. As the chosen people, Israel was tasked with reflecting God's righteousness to the surrounding nations. However, when nations became corrupt and filled with evil practices like idolatry and child sacrifice, God's holiness demanded judgment. For example, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis 19, and the conquest of Canaan, Joshua 6-12, were acts of divine justice against extreme wickedness. In these cases, God used Israel as an instrument of his judgment, while also protecting them from their enemies, such as when he parted the Red Sea to save them from Pharaoh's army, Exodus 14 verses 13-31. However, God's role as a destroyer wasn't limited to Israel's enemies. When Israel themselves fell into sin and disobedience, God's justice also required action. Throughout the Old Testament, Israel repeatedly turned away from God, falling into idolatry and breaking his commandments. As a result, God allowed foreign powers like Babylon to conquer and exile them, leading to events like the destruction of Jerusalem and the Temple, Jeremiah 25 verses 8-11. Yet even in his judgments, God's purpose was always to bring Israel back to repentance. Prophets such as Jeremiah and Ezekiel warned the people about impending destruction but also offered hope of restoration, promising that God would bring them back to their land after their time of discipline. Jeremiah 29 verses 10-14. Ultimately, God's actions as a destroyer must be viewed in the context of his larger plan for redemption. His judgments were not arbitrary but were meant to cleanse evil, uphold justice, and prepare the way for the coming of the Messiah. Despite their failures, God remained faithful to his covenant with Israel, using both judgment and mercy to guide them back to him. Through Jesus, who bore the full weight of God's judgment for sin, God's justice was fulfilled, allowing for salvation to be offered to all. God's role as a destroyer, therefore, was part of his greater purpose to redeem humanity, showing both his holiness and his deep desire for restoration. Thanks for watching, and let's meet on another episode of Bible Tale.